I'm Richard Hensley, 42 years old, a structural engineer with a knack for designing bridges that don't wobble in high winds. My life, for the most part, has been a steady span, predictable, functional, built on trust and routine. My wife, Clara, is 39, a museum curator with an eye for beauty and a laugh that could make a stone statue grin. We've been married for 16 years. No kids, just us and our quiet, comfortable life in a restored Victorian house in Portland, Oregon. Our days were filled with small rituals. Coffee together at sunrise, her reading poetry aloud while I cooked dinner, our walks along the Willamette River where we talk about everything from art to the meaning of life. Clara was my foundation, my keystone, the one thing I never doubted. Until I did. It started with a crack so small I almost missed it. Last spring, Clara began staying late at the museum. She curated exhibits for the Portland Art Museum, and her latest project, a collection of modernist sculptures, was consuming her. "It's a beast, Rich," she'd say, her hazel eyes tired but bright. "The donors are picky. The artist's estates are a nightmare, and the lighting has to be perfect." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She'd always been passionate about her work, and I admired that fire in her. I'd bring her takeout on those late nights, sit in her office while she sorted through paperwork, and drive her home when she was too exhausted to think. But the late nights stretched into whole evenings, then weekends. She'd come home smelling faintly of cedar and leather, scents I didn't recognize, and her phone started buzzing more than usual. She'd glance at it, smile faintly, and tuck it away. "Just work," she'd say, and I'd nod, trusting her like I always had. The first real jolt came in June. We were at a fundraiser for the museum, a glitzy affair at a downtown hotel. Clara was radiant in a deep green dress that hugged her curves. Her auburn hair swept up to show the delicate line of her neck. I felt proud watching her work the room, charming donors and artists alike. That's when I saw him, Elliot Voss, a sculptor whose work was featured in her exhibit. He was in his late 30s, tall and lean, with a mop of dark curls and a smirk that seemed to say he knew something you didn't. His sculptures were bold, jagged things, all sharp angles and raw emotion, and Clara had been raving about his talent for weeks. "He's a genius, Rich," she'd said. "A little eccentric, but his work speaks for itself." I watched them across the ballroom. Clara was laughing at something Elliot said, her hand resting lightly on his arm. It was a small gesture, but it lingered too long. Her eyes sparkled in a way I hadn't seen in months, maybe years. Elliot leaned in, whispering something, and she tilted her head, her lips parting in a soft smile. My stomach twisted, but I brushed it off. She was networking, I told myself. She was doing her job. But when I approached, her hand dropped quickly, and her smile faltered for a split second before she recovered. "Rich, you remember Elliot, right?" she said, her voice a touch too bright. Elliot extended a hand, his grip firm, his eyes locking onto mine with a glint that felt like a challenge. "Good to meet you, Richard. Clara's told me so much about you." The rest of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Clara was attentive, looping her arm through mine, but her laughter felt forced, her glances at Elliot too frequent. When we got home, I tried to talk about it. "You and Elliot seemed cozy," I said, keeping my tone light. She froze, her back to me as she slipped off her earrings. "Cozy? Rich, don't be ridiculous. He's an artist I work with. I have to be friendly." Her voice was sharp, and she turned to face me, her eyes flashing with something I couldn't read. Anger, maybe, or guilt. "I'm just tired," she added, softer now. "Let's not do this." She kissed me goodnight, but it felt like an afterthought, and I lay awake, staring at the shadows on our bedroom ceiling, wondering what I'd seen. The cracks kept spreading. Clara's late nights became a habit, and her excuses grew vague. "I'm meeting with the exhibit team. I need me to oversee the installation." She'd wave a hand as if the details were too tedious to share. Her phone became a constant companion, password protected now, and she'd angle it away when she typed. I noticed other things. A new perfume, one I hadn't bought her, with that cedar note I'd smelled before. A pair of earrings I didn't recognize, delicate silver spirals that didn't match her usual style. She'd brush off my questions. "Oh, Clara, you know I've always had these." But I didn't. I started dressing differently, too, trading her flowy skirts for tighter jeans and silk blouses, as if she were curating herself for someone else's eyes. By July, I was a ghost in my own life. Clara was slipping away, and I was fighting to hold on to her. I planned surprise dinners, booked a weekend at a coastal bed and breakfast, even suggested we renew our vows. She'd smile, say it was sweet, but her heart wasn't in it. "I'm just stressed, Rich," she'd murmur, squeezing my hand. "Once the exhibit's done, I'll be back to normal." But her normal felt like a memory I couldn't trust anymore. Then came the night that broke everything. It was a rainy Wednesday in late September. Clara said she'd be at the museum's storage facility, cataloging pieces for the next exhibit. "I'll be late," she'd said, her voice muffled as she called from her car. "Don't wait up." But I couldn't sleep. I sat in our living room, the house creaking around me, my mind replaying with images of her and Elliot. Around 9 p.m., I did something I'd never done before. I checked her location. We'd shared our phone locations years ago, a safety thing, and she hadn't turned it off. Her dot wasn't at the storage facility in Northeast Portland. It was at an address downtown, a loft building in the Pearl District. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and drove. The rain was a steady hiss against the windshield, the city lights smearing into streaks. I parked across from the building, a sleek glass tower with exposed brick accents. Her car was in the lot, her outside. I sat there, my heart pounding, telling myself to go home. But then I saw them, Clara and Elliot, stepping out of the building together. She was laughing, her coat draped over her shoulders, and he had his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward his car. They didn't see me. They climbed into his vintage Mustang, and he drove off, the taillights vanishing into the rain. I followed them, keeping my distance, my mind a blank roar of white noise. They pulled into a dimly lit lot behind a wine bar, one of those pretentious places with a menu full of words like terroir and mouthfeel. I parked across the street, watching as they slipped inside, their heads close together. I waited, my knuckles white on the steering wheel, my breath fogging the windows. An hour later, they emerged, her arm looped through his, her face flushed with wine or something else. They didn't go back to his loft. Instead, they walked to a boutique hotel nearby, the kind with frosted glass doors and a discreet valet. Elliot handed over his keys, and they disappeared inside. I sat in my car, the rain hammering down, feeling like I'd been hollowed out. My wife was with another man, and I'd chosen a hotel room over our home. I didn't confront them. I didn't storm in. I drove home, my vision swimming, my chest tight, and I was drowning in my own life. When Clara got home at 1 a.m., she was in the shower, humming softly that. I sat on my bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand. I picked it up, my fingers trembling, and I guessed her new password, her birth year and the year we met. It worked. The emails were there, buried in her secondary account. Messages from Elliot going back months. "Can't stop thinking of you. Meet me at the warehouse. You're everything." Her replies were shorter but no less damning. "I'll be there. You're trouble. I need to be careful." There were photos, too. Nothing explicit, but intimate. Her in his studio, her hair messy, her smile radiant. Him with his arms around her, his smirk sharp as ever. My stomach churned, and I set the phone down, my hands numb. Clara came out from the bathroom, wrapped in a towel, her face soft and unsuspecting. "You're still awake, Rich?" she said, pausing. "Everything okay?" I looked at her, my wife, my keystone, and felt the bridge collapse. "Yeah," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos inside. "Everything's fine." She smiled, climbed into bed, and I turned off the light, lying beside her, my mind already turning to something darker than grief. The days after I saw Clara with Elliot were like walking through fog. Everything blurred, heavy, and disorienting. I went through the motions of my life. Waking up at 6 a.m., brewing coffee, heading to my office where I'd stare at blueprints for bridges that suddenly felt like metaphors for my crumbling marriage. Clara was oblivious to the shift in me. She'd kiss my cheek in the morning, her lips cool and quick, and chatter about her exhibit as if nothing had changed. But everything had. I saw her differently now. Her smiles were masks, her touches calculated. Every word she spoke felt like a lie, and I hated how easily she wore her deception. I hated even more how I still loved her, how my heart ached when she laughed or when she'd absently brush her hair behind her ear, a gesture that used to make me want to pull her close. Now it just made me want to scream. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Something in me, maybe pride, maybe fear, kept me silent. Instead, I watched. I became a detective in my own life, piecing together the evidence of her betrayal. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, scrolling through her messages with Elliot. They were careful, never overtly romantic in recent weeks, but the subtext was there. Meet me at the studio, 7 p.m. Missed you yesterday. I tracked her location, noting the times she was at Elliot's loft or that boutique hotel. I even drove by his studio one evening, a converted warehouse in an industrial part of town, its windows glowing with warm light. I saw their silhouettes inside, moving together, and I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. I didn't go in. I wasn't ready to face it head-on. But I was building something. A plan, a reckoning, though I didn't know what it would look like yet. The idea of revenge started small, like a seed lodged in my chest. At first, I just wanted to hurt her back, to make her feel the same gut-wrenching betrayal I did. I fantasized about exposing her at one of her precious museum events, standing up with a microphone and laying her affair bare in front of her colleagues and donors. Or maybe I'd send Elliot's wife, if he had one, anonymously compiled evidence of his wandering hands. But those ideas felt petty, fleeting. They wouldn't match the depth of my pain. I needed something sharper, something that would cut as deeply as she'd cut me. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew it would come to me. I just had to wait, to watch, to let the seed grow. October rolled in, damp and gray, and Clara's affair showed no signs of slowing. If anything, she grew bolder. She'd leave her phone out sometimes, as if daring me to check it, though she'd changed the password again. I cracked it eventually, her mother's maiden name and the year of her first exhibit. The messages were more brazen now. Can't wait to see you tonight. You make me feel alive. I printed them out, kept a folder in my desk at work, hidden behind engineering manuals. I started documenting everything, dates, times, locations, even receipts I found in her purse from restaurants I'd never been to. I wasn't sure why I was collecting it all. It felt like assembling a case, like I was preparing for a trial only I knew was coming. I also started learning about Elliot Voss. He was easy to research. His name was all over art blogs and the museum's website. A rising star in the sculpture world, known for his raw, visceral pieces that critics called confrontational and intimate. He'd grown up in Seattle, studied at RISD, and had a string of solo shows across the West Coast. His Instagram was a mix of studio shots, moody self-portraits, and cryptic captions about truth in chaos. I found his address, his studio's lease records, even an old interview where he talked about his process. Art is about breaking things open, exposing the raw edges. I wanted to break him open, to expose his edges, but I didn't know how. Not yet. At home, I played the part of the oblivious husband. I cooked dinners, asked about her day, even suggested we plan a trip for our anniversary in January. Clara seemed relieved, as if my normalcy reassured her she was getting away with it. "You're so good to me, Rich," she said one night, curling up beside me on the couch. Her head rested on my shoulder, and I could smell that cedar perfume again, the one that wasn't hers, not really. I smiled, kissed the top of her head, and said, "You're my world, Clara." The words tasted like ash, but they kept her comfortable, kept her from suspecting I was unraveling her life thread by thread. The turning point came in mid-October, during a rare evening when Clara was home early. We were eating takeout Thai, and she was talking about a new donor who'd pledged a fortune for the next exhibit. Her phone buzzed, and she glanced at it, then set it face down. I saw the name flash on the screen, Elliot. My pulse spiked, but I kept my face neutral. Work again? I asked, spooning curry onto my plate. She nodded too quickly. Yeah, just the team checking in. I let it go, but later, when she was asleep, I checked her phone. The message was simple. Tomorrow, 8 p.m. My place. Bring the red dress. My vision blurred with rage, but I didn't wake her. Instead, I sat in the dark, the phone glowing in my hand, and felt the seed of revenge sprout into something solid. The next day, I called in sick to work and spent the morning planning. I rented a car, a nondescript sedan, nothing like my silver Tacoma, and parked it near Elliot's loft. I watched Clara arrive at 8:05 p.m., wearing that red dress, the one she'd worn to a gala we attended 2 years ago. She told me she was meeting her curator team for a strategy session. I followed her inside from a distance, slipping into the building's lobby when another tenant left. The elevator took me to the top floor, where Elliot's loft was. I stood outside his door, hearing their laughter, the clink of glasses, the low murmur of music. I didn't knock. I just listened, my ear pressed to the door, my heart pounding so loud I thought they'd hear it. Then I heard her voice, soft and intimate. You make me feel like I'm someone else. I left before I could hear his reply, my hands shaking, my mind racing. That night I didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, the folder of evidence open in front of me, and started sketching out ideas. Confrontation wasn't enough. Divorce wasn't enough. I wanted them to feel the weight of their betrayal, to lose something as fundamental as I had. I thought about their careers, Clara's pristine reputation at the museum, Elliot's rising star in the art world. They were both so proud, so wrapped up in their public personas. That's where I'd hit them. I'd tear down the facades they'd built, expose them not just to each other but to everyone who mattered to them. But I needed more than emails and receipts. I needed proof that couldn't be dismissed. I hired a private investigator the next week. His name was Marcus, a grizzled ex-cop with a no-nonsense demeanor. I met him at a diner across town, sliding my folder across the table. I need concrete evidence, I said. Photos, recordings, whatever you can get. Marcus raised an eyebrow, flipping through the pages. You sure you want to go down this road, Richard? It's not pretty. I nodded, my jaw tight. I'm sure. He took the job, promising results within 2 weeks. I gave him Clara's schedule, Elliot's address, and every detail I'd gathered. They're not as careful as they think, he said, pocketing the folder. People like this never are. While Marcus worked, I kept up the charade at home. Clara noticed I was quieter, but she chalked it up to work stress. You okay, Rich? She'd ask, her brow furrowed with what looked like genuine concern. I'd nod, force a smile and say, just a tough project. She'd pat my hand, relieved, and go back to her phone. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming I didn't want to disturb her with my restless nights. In truth, I couldn't stand being in our bed, knowing she'd been with him. I spent those nights planning, refining, imagining the moment when I'd unveil their ruin. Marcus delivered on the 10th day. He handed me a USB drive in the same diner, his face grim. It's all there, he said. Photos, audio, even some video. They're not discreet. I didn't look at the files right away. I drove home, locked myself in my office, and stared at the drive for hours. When I finally plugged it in, my hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. The photos were clear. Clara and Elliot in his loft, her in that red dress, his hands on her waist. The audio was worse. Her voice, soft and breathless, saying things I'd thought were just for me. The video was brief, grainy, but unmistakable. Them together in that hotel, the curtains half drawn, their silhouettes unmistakable. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat there, letting the images burn into me, fueling the plan taking shape. The revenge was coming into focus now. It wouldn't be loud or violent. It would be precise, public, and permanent. I'd use their own world, the art world, with its egos and reputations, to dismantle them. Clara's exhibit was set to open in 2 weeks. a gala event with critics, donors, and artists from across the country. Elliot's sculptures were the centerpiece. It was their stage, their moment, and it would be their undoing. The 2 weeks leading up to Clara's exhibit opening were a study in restraint. I moved through my life like an actor in a play, every gesture deliberate, every word scripted to keep Clara and Elliot unaware of the storm I was orchestrating. At home, I was the dutiful husband, cooking breakfast, asking about her day, even helping her proofread the exhibit catalog. Clara seemed grateful, almost affectionate, as if my attentiveness eased her guilt. "You're my rock, Rich," she said one morning, her hand lingering on mine. I smiled, my stomach twisting, and said, "Always, Clara." But inside, I was counting down the days, my mind fixed on the gala, the stage where their world would collapse. The evidence Marcus had gathered was my arsenal. The photos, audio, and video were damning, but I needed more than raw proof. I needed a delivery that would maximize their humiliation, something that would linger in the art world's collective memory. I spent nights in my office, the door locked, poring over the files. I edited the audio clips into a seamless montage: Clara's laughter, her whispered confessions, Elliot's smug voice promising her things I couldn't unhear. I blurred the video just enough to keep it tasteful but unmistakable, a shadowy tableau of their betrayal. The photos I left untouched. Their clarity was their power. I burned everything onto a drive, labeled it Exhibit Notes, and kept it in my desk, waiting for the moment to strike. My plan was simple but surgical. The gala, set for November 1st, was the museum's biggest event of the year. Critics from New York and Los Angeles were flying in, along with wealthy donors and the city's cultural elite. Clara had been working toward this night for months, her reputation as a curator riding on its success. Elliot's sculptures, hulking, jagged forms of steel and stone, were the centerpiece. His name splashed across every press release. The evening would begin with a cocktail reception, followed by Clara's keynote speech and a multimedia presentation showcasing the exhibit's themes. That presentation was my target. I'd volunteered to help with the tech setup, citing my engineering background, and Clara had been relieved. "You're a lifesaver, Rich," she'd said, kissing my cheek. She had no idea I was wiring her downfall. I spent hours at the museum after hours, familiarizing myself with the AV system. The presentation was stored on a laptop in Clara's office, synced to a projector in the main gallery. I tested my drive on the system, ensuring the files would play smoothly. I hacked into the laptop's admin account. Clara's password habits were predictable, and embedded my montage into the presentation, set to trigger halfway through her slides. It would look like a glitch, a mistake, but the damage would be done before anyone could stop it. I also prepared a backup. Printed copies of the photos, tucked into envelopes addressed to key figures, museum board members, critics, and Elliot's agent. I'd mail them anonymously the morning of the gala, ensuring the scandal spread beyond the room. The night before the gala, Clara W.'s a bundle of nerves. She paced our living room, rehearsing her speech, her hands fluttering like birds. "This is it, Rich," she said, her eyes bright with anticipation. "If this goes well, it could mean a promotion, maybe even a bigger museum." I nodded, pouring her a glass of wine. "You'll be brilliant," I said, my voice warm, my heart cold. She smiled, unaware that I'd already mailed the envelopes, that the museum's IT guy had unwittingly helped me test the projector, that everything was in place. That night, I lay in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, feeling no triumph, only a grim resolve. This wasn't about joy. It was about justice. The gala arrived, a crisp November evening with a sky like polished obsidian. The museum was transformed, white lights strung across the courtyard, waiters gliding with trays of champagne, the air thick with perfume and ambition. Clara was radiant in a black gown, her auburn hair swept up, her smile dazzling as she greeted guests. I wore a tailored suit, playing the proud husband, shaking hands with donors who praised my wife's vision. Elliot was there, of course, in a velvet blazer, his curls tamed, his smirk sharper than ever. He caught my eye once, nodding curtly, and I returned the gesture, my face a mask. Inside, I was a furnace, burning with the knowledge of what was coming. The reception hummed along, guests murmuring over Elliot's sculptures, their angular forms looming under spotlights. I stayed near the AV booth, checking the laptop, my pulse steady. Clara took the stage at 8:30 p.m., her voice clear and confident as she welcomed the crowd. "This exhibit," she said, "is about raw truth, about the courage to expose what's hidden." The irony wasn't lost on me. She clicked to the first slide, a photo of one of Elliot's pieces, and began her talk. I watched from the booth, my hand on the drive, though I didn't need it, the trap was already set. 10 minutes in, the screen flickered. Clara paused, glancing at the booth, but I gave her a reassuring nod. The next slide loaded, and the room went silent. Instead of a sculpture, there was a photo, Clara and Elliot in his loft, her in the red dress, his hands on her. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Clara's smile faltered. "I'm sorry. There must be a—" she started. But the screen shifted to the audio, her voice filling the gallery. "You make me feel like I'm someone else." Gasps erupted. The video followed, grainy but clear, their silhouettes in the hotel room. The room erupted in whispers, heads turning, eyes wide. Clara froze, her face draining of color. Elliot, standing near the front, went rigid, his smirk gone. I stepped out of the booth, blending into the crowd, watching as Clara stammered, "This isn't... Please, turn it off." But the museum's AV tech, unaware of my sabotage, fumbled, letting the montage loop. Guests stared, some horrified, others gleeful, their phones already out, capturing the scandal. Clara fled the stage, her heels clicking, and I saw Elliot push through the crowd, his face a mask of panic. I didn't follow them. I stayed, sipping champagne, as the room buzzed with gossip. Board members huddled, their faces grim. Critics typed furiously on their phones, the story already spreading. My envelopes would arrive by morning, ensuring the fallout reached every corner of their world. I felt no rush of victory, only a quiet satisfaction, like finishing a bridge after years of work. The structure was complete, and it would stand long after tonight. Clara didn't come home that night. I found her things gone the next morning. Clothes, jewelry, her favorite books. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "I'm sorry. I can't face you." I read it once, then burned it in the sink. My lawyer called later, saying she'd contacted him about a divorce. I told him to stall, to make it slow and painful. I wanted her to feel every moment of her ruin. The fallout was swift and brutal. The museum suspended Clara pending an investigation, citing unprofessional conduct. Her exhibit was pulled, the sculptures shipped back to Elliot's studio. His career took a harder hit. Critics savaged him, calling his work tainted by scandal. His agent dropped him and galleries canceled his shows. I read about it online, posts on X painting them as the art world's latest pariahs. Clara moved to Seattle, I heard, living with her sister, her reputation in tatters. Elliot vanished from public view, his Instagram gone dark. I stayed in our house, the silence deafening but bearable. I sold her piano, donated her clothes, erased her from the walls. Friends asked if I was okay, and I said I was. I wasn't lying. The pain was still there, a dull ache, but I'd cauterized the wound. I started working on a new bridge project, one that would span the Columbia River, its design bold and unyielding. At night, I'd sit on the porch, a whiskey in hand, and think about Clara, about Elliot, about the gala. I didn't regret it. They'd built their betrayal, and I'd built their consequences. Sometimes I wondered if Clara knew it was me. I hoped she did. I hoped she saw my hand in every whisper, every closed door. I hoped she felt the weight of it the way I'd felt hers. And then I'd sip my whiskey, watch the stars, and let her go, a little more each night, until she was just a shadow, a story I'd survived.